If you work in SAP, you've probably had a version of this thought recently. Is what I know still going to be worth something in 5 years? I'm going to give you a straight answer, and it's different depending on which seat you're in. So here's how I've structured this. First, the part that applies to everyone, about 2 minutes. Then I'm going to split into three, one for developers, one for functional consultants, one for support and basis. Chapters are in the description. Jump to your seat if you want, but I'd watch the other two as well because the most interesting thing in this whole video is where they overlap, right? What's actually happening? Three things are landing at the same time, and any one of them on its own would be manageable. One, clean core. Custom code is moving out of the core and onto released APIs. That means decades of modifications, enhancements, and direct table access either get rebuilt or retired. Not should. The platform is being built to make the old way progressively harder. Two, AI tooling. Generation got cheap. Joule writes ABAP, general models write everything else, and the thing that used to take a morning takes a prompt. I'll come back to what that actually means because it's more interesting than the headlines suggest. Three, continuous change. The 3-year upgrade cycle is being replaced by a cloud release cadence. Something changes every quarter, forever. Nothing is ever finished. Individually, fine. Together in the same 18 months? That's why the job feels different, and that's why the anxiety is rational rather than imagined. But here's what all three of them do, and this is the single most useful idea in this video. They move the value from producing the work to judging it. If you write code, the shift is from writing the code to knowing whether it's right. If you're functional, from configuring to the spec to shaping the spec. If you're in support, from closing the ticket to knowing why it keeps reopening. Same idea, 3 seats. And notice what that means. None of it removes the need for people who understand why a system behaves the way it does. It just moves where your value sits. If you take one thing away and stop watching, take that. Developers first. Let me be honest about what's losing value because pretending otherwise doesn't help anyone. Memorizing function modules and syntax. Raw speed at boilerplate. Classic-only depth. GUI reports, user exits, modifications. And writing the kind of code a model now produces in about 4 seconds. If your entire professional identity is, I write ABAP quickly, that's the part under pressure. I'd rather say that plainly than dress it up. Now here's the other half, and it's genuinely more interesting work. Judging output. Does it perform? Will it survive the next upgrade? Does it do what the business actually meant rather than what the ticket said? That's judgment, and judgment built on years of experience doesn't automate. Think about who's actually qualified to supervise a tool that's fast and occasionally confidently wrong. It's the person who's debugged a production dump at 2 a.m. It's the person who knows why a select inside a loop kills a system. Your experience isn't legacy baggage here. It's the qualification. Set-based thinking. The old habit was pull data up into ABAP and process it in loops. HANA rewards the opposite, moving from procedural to set-based, pushdown, CDS, AMDP, is probably the single most valuable technical shift a classic ABAP developer can make right now. Clean core patterns. ABAP Cloud, RAP, released APIs. This is where the platform is going, and there's no version of the future where it isn't. And breadth, OData, enough Fiori to be dangerous, some BTP. The pure backend ABAP specialist gets rare. So what do you actually do? 4 things, 1 a quarter, all doable alongside a full workload. Months 1 to 3, get graded. Run ATC with the clean core and ABAP. Cloud readiness checks against code you wrote. Not a demo system, your own objects. Abstract guidance never lands the way your own findings do. Months 4 to 6, learn CDS properly. Not just consuming views, building them. Then take one loop-heavy report and convert it to pushdown. And measure the before and after, because that number is the most persuasive thing you can put in front of a manager. Months 7 to 9, build something in RAP. One small business object, end-to-end. Deploy it, support it. Months 10 to 12, go off stack, one side-by-side extension on BTP, and use the AI tooling every day, not to be impressed by it, but to learn precisely where it's wrong. One rule through all of that, build something real. A tutorial you followed proves nothing. An object running in your own system proves you can do the work. Functional consultants. And I'll say up front, I think this is the seat that gains the most and the one most people underestimate. What's fading? Transaction codes as the core professional skill. Configuration by rote in areas that are getting standardized. And this one stings a bit, acting as the translator between business and developers. That gap is narrowing because developers can read a business requirement better than they used to, and you can read generated code better than you used to. But losing the translator role isn't a loss. It frees you to move upstream. Here's what's gaining, knowing exactly what standard already does. This is pure leverage, and it's massively undervalued. Every custom build that gets stopped because someone said, actually, standard covers that, saves money, saves upgrade risk, and saves a future remediation project. You become the person who prevents technical debt rather than the person who specs it. Reading and reasoning about generated code in CDS. You don't need to write it. You need to look at what the tool produced and say, that's not what I meant. Launchpad and catalog design. This is quietly a user experience decision now, and it's usually made by whoever happens to be nearby. It determines whether people adopt the system or quietly work around it, and deciding where automation acts and where a human signs off. As workflow goes agentic, someone has to decide what the system is allowed to do on its own. That's a process design question, and it's yours. The path, built around one principle: never spec a custom build for something standard already does. Months 1 to 3, learn the data model in your area. What tables does your module actually post to now? What did the Universal Journal change about your reporting? Months 4 to 6, map what exists. Every standard Fiori app in your module. Which classic transactions are superseded? Build your own catalog. I'd argue this is the highest return exercise on the entire list. You will find capability nobody knew was there, and it pays for itself the first time it stops an unnecessary development. Months 7 to 9, extend without a developer. Key user extensibility, in-app extensibility. Ship one change end-to-end yourself. Months 10 to 12, design a process. Flexible workflow scenarios in your area, where autonomy is allowed, where sign-off stays. And write the governance rule, not just the configuration. Support and basis. And I want to start here rather than end here because this is the seat that feels most exposed and is actually holding one of the strongest hands. What's fading? Honestly, answering what's the transaction code, manual repetitive checks, the annual upgrade project rhythm, firefighting modifications nobody documented. Some of that is genuinely going away. And some of it, the modification firefighting, good riddance. Now what's gaining, and this is the part nobody tells this audience, gatekeeping what reaches production. Think about what AI tooling actually does to your world. More code arriving faster from more people with more confidence behind it. Somebody has to decide what's allowed through. That's increasingly you, and it's a promotion disguised as a problem. Governance and audit trails. As workflow goes agentic, systems that decide and act rather than just route. Somebody has to answer the auditor. Segregation of duties. Who's accountable when an autonomous step goes wrong? In a regulated environment, that's not a nice to have. Launchpad and role diagnosis. The ticket shape changed. It used to be, what's the T code? Now it's, why is my tile missing? And the answer might be the catalog, the group, the space, the role, or the authorization underneath. 4 places to look where there used to be one. Continuous release management and regression automation. When something changes every quarter, testing stops being a project phase and becomes a permanent capability. And diagnostic judgment. Understanding why a posting failed beats knowing which screen the button is on. That's the durable part, and you already have more of it than you think. The path. Move from closing tickets to owning the gate. Months 1 to 3. Own the Launchpad. Catalogs, groups, spaces, pages. Write the diagnosis sequence for a missing tile and share it with your team. Months 4 to 6. Run the quality gate. Become the person who runs ATC and can read the output. Define what blocks a transport. Report the estate by level. Months 7 to 9. Automate regression. A test suite for the processes that matter most. Run it every release, not every project. Measure how much manual testing it removes because that number is your business case. Months 10 to 12. Govern autonomy. Audit trails for automated and agent-driven steps. Segregation of duties where systems act alone. That last one is, I think, the most valuable square on this whole board. Technology can route and it can decide, it cannot own accountability. Somebody has to, and that somebody is worth a lot. 4 things hold value regardless of your seat. Domain depth, the part that doesn't automate. A model can write the CDS view. It cannot tell you which ledger the posting belongs in for your organization under your accounting principles. AI fluency, not prompt tricks. Knowing what these tools do well, where they're confidently wrong, and, importantly, what should never leave your tenant. Judgment, reviewing, deciding, saying no. Producing work is getting cheap. Deciding whether it's right is not. Communication, turning business intent into a specification, and technical reality back into something a stakeholder can act on. And here's the good news buried in that list. 3 of those 4 can't be taught by a course. They're earned by doing the work, which means if you've got years in these systems, you already hold most of what matters. Now, the part most videos on this topic skip, because I said straight answer and I meant it. The floor is rising and the middle is getting squeezed. What's genuinely exposed is commodity delivery. Routine custom reports, headcount billed by the day, work defined entirely by a ticket queue. If that describes the whole of your job, not part of it, the whole of it, that's the exposed position, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But the response isn't resisting the tools or waiting for it to blow over. The people who treat this as a threat to hide from get outcompeted by people with identical experience who treat it as leverage. Same person, different response. Completely different next 5 years. So, one thing to start this month, not a plan, one action. Developers, run ATC with clean core checks against code you wrote. Functional, list every standard Fiori app in your module. Support and basis, write the 4-step diagnosis for a missing tile and share it with the team. Each of those produces something you can show someone. That matters more than any certificate. Nobody is being replaced by a tool that needs supervising. But the comfortable version of the bomb, where what you already knew kept you safe, that's the part that's ending. There's a deck of all of this in the description, free, no email required. And there's an interactive version on the site where you pick your seat and it rewrites itself for you. Subscribe if this was useful. I do this daily. See you in the next one.